Well, hey, Facebook Live. Hope you are having a good day. I see you, Brian Benson, my future upcoming guest. This is going to be great. People are on the ball. If you are watching this, feel free to leave a little comment. I am not recording for the podcast, so I can certainly give you a shout out in real time once I am not going into the agenda here. And we have a very large agenda because we have another 18 people to interview this week. Going to tell you just a little bit about last week. Last week was a record-breaking week for Be The Talk. Hey, Josh. Man, you guys are really on like Donkey Kong. Josh is first up, and Josh got me to really break the wall a little bit with his podcast because they did a deconstructing of the Seinfeld puffy shirt episode, which led me to leave about 18 comments on Josh's wall, which I think at some point he probably stopped appreciating my enthusiasm at that point. But anyway, speaking of 18, we have 18 interviews this week. Brian Benson, comment number 1, Josh Powlison, comment number 2. You guys are part of that 18. It's good to see you on here so quickly. And Josh says, that's all right. Well, hey, man, I appreciate it. I got to be careful. I got to be careful about this stuff. So we have 18 interviews this week. Last week we had a scheduled record-breaking 19 scheduled episodes last week, and is not uncommon with that many scheduled episodes to have a few cancellations, whatever. So I completed actually it was 16 completed interviews last week. One person was busy at work and, missed their call, which the person is a scientist and doing some really, really important work, so it's all good. Another person opted out because I think their talk wasn't live yet. I've interviewed people, plenty of people, especially in the earlier days of this podcast, whose talks weren't live yet, but that was another reason. And then there was a third that I just called and left a message. And basically when that happens, because I've got so many people in so few days to be able to do these interviews, I try to get as many opportunities out for people as possible. And I understand totally if it goes to voicemail or if we have a little Skype mix-up or whatever, that really happens quite a lot. And I really try to let people know. And for the credit, my guests, the vast majority of my guests really bend over backward. I mean, I think it's borderline, what I do and what I ask of myself and also my guest is very high level. And I'm doing this currently. I don't have, handlers of my schedule. So it's really just me, the guest, and Skype and the clock. And so, I totally understand it. If there's a, call goes into voicemail or whatever, I'm right there by the phone for the next at least 5 minutes, if not 10 minutes. And so this final scheduled interview, I left a message. Hey, looking forward to this. Just give me a ring back. And or Skype me back, and no response at all, and not even an email afterwards. So it's okay. I'm doing this because I love interviewing you, and my guests do this because they love being interviewed, and I'm really making some decisions to really make it possible for those that really want to be interviewed. I want to interview them, the ones that really want it. Ones I totally get if they don't want it quite that much, that's fine too. And I've made a leadership decision to prioritize the ones that really, really want it. So, you can see it right here. We've got, my first 2 guests this week already leaving comments, as well as Rich McBain, man, which all you regulars know, we were neighbors freshman year at the music school. So, Rich was, I'll tell you what, Rich gets the comment award for last week. He jumped on. I know you're giving lessons and you're coaching, and doing all of that, Rich, but it seemed like every other Facebook Live last week, man, you were asking the questions. It was just really, I'll tell you what, I don't like to believe that I am solidly in my 40s at this point, but one of the cool things of being solidly in your 40s is when people from 2 decades ago, more than, I mean, it's actually 20 freaking 5 years ago, as an 18-year-old, I'm a freshman in college, and that's when I met Rich here. And, man, how cool to be doing something. And I know, Rich, you're doing stuff that's impacting people. I mean, you're teaching arts and you are helping other people, and that impact, you know, it just goes on and on and on through the decades. So, man, isn't that cool? Another thing that I learned and am still learning is I'm learning kind of the rhythm of Be the Talk. I mean, Be the Talk, it's kind of like across the river here in New Jersey. I live in Delaware, so across the river is in New Jersey, and there is a place in New Jersey that's a little bit of a step into yesteryear. It is called Cowtown. And I think, Rich, you'll like this because I think you live in Texas, or you Southern California again, or did you move back or whatever. But, I mean, it's like a little slice of Texas in South Jersey, and it is a rodeo. And, I mean, you watch the people in the rodeo, and my wife likes to bring her camera and take action shots, and my wife is a gifted photographer. And, I mean, it's a wild ride. Well, guess what, folks? Be the Talk is a wild ride. I mean, I'm used to certain levels of rigorous training. I'm used to, you know, practicing an instrument for hours and hours and hours in a day. This is a different kind of rigor, and I'm not whining because this is a lot of fun. Actually, this is a whole lot more fun. This is a whole lot more fun because I don't have to, you know, work for hours and hours and hours and, you know, and prepare and then try to bring a crowd together. I mean, you're here. I mean, the times are ripe for Facebook Live and Be the Talk. So I am not griping. I am not complaining. However, I am saying that, you know, energy management is a thing and prioritization is a thing. All kinds of stuff is a thing. Now, I have given myself, you wonder why you see the timer right there. It's because I'm trying to manage my energy. So let's dig into this week, and then if you stay on the line long enough, or if you come back to this afterwards, I will give you some of my takeaways. Yeah, this is actually more fun than Chopin, huh? Rich, it's because you played that fourth ballade so well. Maybe you have a different opinion than me on this, but yeah, this is a lot of fun. All right, so first off, here he is, right here in the comments. Josh Powlison, I mentioned him as well. He is going to be talking to us. His TEDx was called Story Engineering: How to Tell a Story. And I watch all of these talks before. It used to be before I interviewed them. Now it's before I do this video, and I do it so that I can be prepared on a minimal level. I try to be more than minimally prepared, but this is an absolute minimal level to watch their talk several days before, have it incubating in my head, you know, let my subconscious bring some intelligent questions to the surface, as opposed to stupid, repetitive questions like you might ask a top-level GOAT basketball player after his colleague doesn't know what the shot clock is on. Okay, now if you don't understand the illusion, I posted that link over the weekend. You might want to check it out. So Josh Powlison, Story Engineering. What I like about his talk, one of the many things I liked about his talk, is he actually has like a little Excel document or a Word document in there, and he's actually teaching us how to write a story using a story template, which I just thought was great. Yeah, Andrea, thanks for the note-taking. It's going to be great. You're not going to miss it with Josh. And here's the policy on Facebook Live. Here's the policy on Skype. Here's the policy on everything. And for those of you that want to be on the red carpet someday and then want to be able to come on Be the Talk podcast after you've given a branded talk, just so you know, Skype is mandatory at this point. It is no longer optional. And the reason for that is because I'm doing so many of these back-to-back episodes. And if you're switching between, you know, somebody wants to do Zoom instead of Skype, and somebody just wants a phone call, and then the next person suggests like WhatsApp or some new app that you don't even have. I mean, that's not fair to everybody, like Brian and Josh and everyone else that's showing up early, ready to go, really looking forward to their interview. So as I mentioned, now I have a little bit of time over the weekend to reflect a little bit. And I thought to myself, 19 people scheduled last week, 16 people showed up. They were ready to go. They were awesome. Actually, not all 16 people were available. Not all. There was a story that I'm not going to tell you about from last week that was an interesting story. I'm going to wait about 6 months to, I think, and put some more distance between this before I share it. But that's definitely going to be shared in the future. But 16 people, my point, ready to go. 3 people for whatever reason, and many times it's a very legitimate reason. I have one person who was a guest who was like air rescued off of a mountain during which sounds like, I think, an emergency to me, or maybe they shouldn't have been up the mountain, you might say. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. I'm just glad the people are safe to be interviewed in the future. Somebody else had, there are car accidents that happened to family members. It's just really, really tragic. And I'm actually I'm thinking I should probably be praying over my list. Because I believe in that. I just don't want weird things to happen to any of my, guests in a given week, especially if they're, 10, 15, 20 people I'm interviewing. So, all of that to say, I am looking forward to this. I think I took a little bit of a bunny trail here. So, Josh, lucky to have you on. We are looking forward to it. After that, we have, Rena, DeLevie. And, one of the things that I need to encourage everybody, let me know how to pronounce your name in advance. I only have 4 questionnaire questions on my premium VIP Calendly link. They only let me ask you 4 questions. So, it's like I'd like to ask like 7 questions, but I can only do 4. So Rena is going to be on, and her talk is called Using Compassion as a Business Tool. I really like her talk. And it reminds me of what I was talking to Don Ream about this past week, and you'll hear that in the review. Don was amazing. He is a broadcast journalist, and his radio voice makes my radio voice sound like Mickey Mouse. This guy, he has the voice. It was like Shoutcap's voice. It was amazing. And Don talked about emotional intelligence and the synergy that I'd never heard before, these stats. Synergy, when you work with somebody at work and you're working really good together and you don't have to start at the beginning, you can just show up and get into, it's like having 3 employees for the price of 2. If you're a CEO, if you're a manager, if you're an executive, imagine only paying for 2 employees but getting an extra 50% out of both of them. That's exactly what happens in metabolic energy units per Don's talk and our interview with Don. It was amazing. So that's what Rena is talking about in her talk, which is called Using Compassion as a Business Tool. It's about managing by trust and incentive, and managing by leadership rather than management by fear. We're going to have a great talk. Moving on, Adam Schieferecke, he is tagged on here because he reached out to me early enough, so I appreciate that. Adam, tell me how to pronounce your name, my friend. His talk is called Viruses as Powerful Tools Cure Cancers and Genetic Diseases. It's all about how we've cracked the genome and we understand DNA now, and we're able now to be able to proactively go after cancers and other things like that, genetic diseases, using viruses to turn against themselves. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, I have a little bit of a skew somehow, what I'm going to do in I've got you can't see this. You wonder why, is he that inarticulate? Well, I can be inarticulate a little bit, but sometimes what it is that I've got, this, what is this? This is a spreadsheet. That's what this is. I'm moving around stuff on my spreadsheet, and you can't see it. You just see my pupils dilating and my all this weird. I don't know what it looks like, but pretty crazy. So after Adam's talk, so that's going to be a very science-based talk. So I'm prepared to learn because I know nothing about science. That was my kind of not my favorite topic in school. But now that we have branded talks like TEDx and TED Talks and Google Talks and, Idea City Talks, it's much more interesting when people like Adam make it a whole lot more interesting. It's all good. After Adam, we have Lena K. Now, Lena grew up in Iraq, if I understand correctly. And so she gave a talk in, I believe it was Iraq. It was the Kurd people had hosted a branded event at TEDx. And so now she is living in London, really high-level trainer and coach and speaker. She's talking about 3 steps to transform your life. And, I've heard the 3 steps. They're very good 3 steps. It's the kind of thing, begin with the end in mind, that my mentor talks about. Stephen Covey was a mentor through his book, but I have other mentors, and they talk about imagining the end goal of what you're trying to do. So if you're doing a podcast, for example, do you want to just kind of show up on day 1 or day 6 interviewing people and just act like you're on day 6? Or do you want to maybe have a nice little backdrop and maybe raise the logo if you can afford responsibly to upgrade the level of some of your equipment just for the visuals? Just for the theater of the visuals, not even the audio quality, as I've done. Just do it. But you begin and you act every day as far ahead to that end state, and you act as if you were already there. Really powerful tools. After that, Brian Benson, who has commented right here, at least for me, it's right here. He says he's looking forward to it. I am looking forward to it, buddy. Brian is a multiple entrepreneur. He has done several, I think, Ironman events. This is a guy, if I was fit, I would be looking to him even more for advice and help and all of that stuff. He's going to be talking. His talk was called "Be Yourself to Free Yourself, Finding Your Personal Freedom." So this is going to be one of those kind of autobiopic talks from somebody who has really achieved a lot of things that the rest of us little people really have always wanted to achieve, and maybe are in the middle of pursuing those achievements. And we're going to have his perspective from doing that and being there. And I think there's going to be a lot of wisdom there as well. Dr. Colleen Georges, I love her talk, and I can relate to her talk. It's called Rescripting the Stories We Tell Ourselves. It's all about the inner critic. Some of us call it a gremlin. And I love her talk because it's really personal to me, because the whole time that I was studying, Rich is here on the line, or at least he was before. He's clicking that liker button. When I met Rich at Music Conservatory, I know a little bit of his story. Here was my story, though, is like I was striving. I was trying to, be everything that I was told I needed to be, which is beat everybody else out. Classical music is a very hard business model. The only way to win is to be one of 4 people in the entire world, which at that point I think we had 6 billion people, or maybe only 5 billion people. But it was like there were 4 jobs, which was really just limited mindset thinking from well-meaning people who had more, I wouldn't say comfortable jobs, because medicine is not a comfortable job, but I had a very medically oriented family. They wanted the best for me, and they tried to steer my mind in a very hyper-competitive mindset, because that was we didn't know any professional musicians other than my teacher, and we didn't live in a suburban or a center city kind of well-to-do area, and we didn't have a social circle of professional classical musicians. And so I grew up in a very fixed mindset. That did not serve me very well. So I have spent the last 20 years, I spent the first 20 years trying to compete and do all that. I've spent the last 20 years in some ways, recovering from an ridiculously fixed, unrealistically fixed, and kind of hyper fixed mindset that is not the way to get ahead in the world. You have to create possibilities. And who knew 20 years ago that this bulletin board, weird, funny computer modem would turn into the internet and we'd be able to podcast and interview people and do all these amazing things, have unbelievable social connections and make it work. So all this back to Dr. Colleen Georges. This is all about me here. Dr. Georges is talking about re-scripting the stories that we tell ourselves. I love how she shared very vulnerably about how she focused on, instead of the good things, she focused on the bad because she was trying to improve herself. I had the exact same thing. If I focus on all the bad things about this piano, the Chopin ballade that Rich and I are talking, if I focus on all the bad things, then I'll make it good. Well, now, I mean, if you focus on rooting out all the bad things, in your garden, if you just yank out all the weeds without planting something in your garden or considering the aesthetic of your garden or the smells you should look at the garden that my wife architected. It's beautiful. But if all you do is just weed your garden, you're just going to have a big brown, muddy dirt pile. If you don't think, or random, expensive, plants that don't really gel very well. You have to really focus on the good parts and then also adopt in proportion a stoicism mindset that I'm going to get done whatever needs to get done. I'm going to be ruthless. I'm not going to expect it to be fair, easy. I'm going to embrace the hardness, like we've heard a couple of weeks back. It was a big week with Marcus Anderson and Willem Philipson. Oh my gosh. I mean, those guys, wow, having the privilege of interviewing those guys, and they were so humble, and it makes me feel pretty humble as well, and pretty blessed and privileged. And both of them, I believe, were Facebook Live, so you can actually get those and watch them right now. Oh wow! All right, we got more to talk about. Aliha Nasrullah, A Child's Vision, was her TEDx talk, and great. I'm looking forward to have Aliha on the talk because she comes from a Muslim family that was a little, her background sounds to me, and I hope this isn't a judgment or a stereotype or whatever, and I don't mean it to be. I'll just say it in a nice way, which it's a wonderful thing I'm about to say. Her parents encouraged her to do whatever she was passionate about doing. And fortunately, she was privileged that her parents, it sounds like, had the means to help her pursue whatever passions, no limitations, and follow, and her faith is a Muslim faith, and she was encouraged to do that, but also get into technology and get into, I think a little bit maybe of music and some arts, and just all kinds of different things, and healthcare. And then she ended up starting a healthcare nonprofit, and she's doing all kinds of good in the world. Now, one of the goals that I have here on Be the Talk is I just want to help other people share their stories, especially people who have given a branded talk. And I define that as one of 5 different talks, and you know what those 5 are, those you have been following me. Now, I may not have the exact same background as someone to be able to really appreciate where they're coming from and learn a lot from them. So I show up and I don't bring my mindset of the region, of the state, or the country that I was raised in, or, my own faith principles, other than to love and respect people. I'm just there to learn, okay? And so I know that you, Talk Universe, you're doing the same thing, because we have all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of different political views, all kinds of different ideas of what this thing should be and that thing is, and what's this concept, and what's the real truth out there, and all of these things. But the beautiful thing about Be the Talk, and the beautiful thing about these branded talks, Ted out there being the big gorilla of them all, that really is leading the way in this, is to share ideas. And so in order for somebody to share an idea, they have to articulate it well, but then also for the idea to spread, it has to be received. Okay, so I've got to listen to all kinds of different people, different than me, with a learning attitude, and I can go back later and I can sort through it all out and do I really believe this or that, or, can I just get along with people and appreciate their talks and everything else for what they have. So all that being said, I don't know that I've had any topics, religious topics about Islam or having. I've had I'm sure Muslim people on the talk before. I've always enjoyed talking, but it was always about science, or it was about politics, or it was about, transcribing, TED Talks or whatever it was. It wasn't actually about a little bit more personal topics. So, Aliha, welcome, and I am looking forward to talking with you. Now, look who's next on the list. Rabbi Elchanan Poupko is the next one on the, obviously we're going from Aliha to a rabbi, and the rabbi's talk is called, this is going to be great. Where is it? I don't have the title. I have a YouTube link, okay, but I remember what the title basically is. It's about the cost of divisiveness, of political divisiveness. And this is going to be great because, Rabbi Poupko has all kinds of reasons why it is not a good thing that we are getting polarized. One bad thing is we're spending less time at Thanksgiving dinner because we don't want to be talking to crazy Uncle Nathan or, anybody else at the table and just kind of have a shout fest. So there's actually data showing that we're spending less time on the road, going less far, and spending less time at Thanksgiving dinner, which is kind of a shame because Thanksgiving is about giving thanks. It's about the history of America. There was a kind of a Protestant worldview that the Pilgrims had because they were not Hindu or, from any other, religion or region of the world. But it can be something that all of us can, who are not carnivore, who are not vegetarians, or you can have tofurkey, or you can have a different substitute for the turkey. And come together and eat your tofu or your salad or your turkey or whatever you choose to have on the plate at Thanksgiving. The whole point is to come together. So I'm looking forward to Rabbi Poupko's talk and the interview with him. After the rabbi, Marissa Piccolo is after that. How to Save Democracy, Ideas from Women Across the World. This is going to be just off the chart. We do need to kind of save democracy, or I would say, democracy, and also America is technically a republic, because if it wasn't a republic, it would be, the top 5 cities and the voters tipping the tipping point, and we would just have to pander to all the cities. I know, depending on who won the last election, there's always debate and wanting to take that out, but that is the reason why it is. The founding fathers, they were, there was kind of the patriarchy back then, but, they had a pretty good view down the line in some, many areas, I would say, because we're still following their model, although we have amended many of the things that needed to be amended since then. So I'm looking forward to your talk, Marissa, as well. Judy Hoberman is next, and this is where my my internal systems are starting to fail me, because I just have a link right there, and you're thinking, come on, Nathan, get with the program. Well, this is what it looks like when you have this volume of things. This is what it looks like. So because I'm doing a Facebook Live now, I'm going to go back and study up and do my homework. Let's talk about Marissa just for a moment. She was actually there. I'm going to do a special disclaimer before this, just because, it's okay. If you voted for Trump, great. Watch Be the Talk and come and listen and watch Be the Talk in the spirit of ideas we're spreading. Okay, if you voted for Bernie, if you voted for Hillary, okay, come and respect the views of other people that maybe grew up in a rural area, and maybe they grew up in a coal region, and that has been their experience. Let's just all try to give extra grace to one another, and really, I really try to keep it from being like one side of the aisle is cool and the other side is deplorable or not cool or whatever. I kind of just slipped out a bad word that was a trigger word, so I really actually try not to do that. But let's just try to be balanced and really start listening to each other so that we can come together. Now, all that, why did I go into all that stuff? Well, because Marissa Piccolo's talk, she was actually, and I feel for her, because the last election, the night of the election, it was a shock, not just for some people. I think it was a shock for everybody. Okay, I think it was a shock for the people who voted for the current administration. I think it was shocking for them as well. And Marissa, her talk is about what it was like to be there at Hillary Clinton headquarters waiting for the announcement. It was a little bit of a delayed announcement, and so this is going to be an interesting interview, because she gave so much of her time. Marissa gave so much of her time to the Clinton campaign, campaigned for her, volunteered. I mean, the people in that audience that night, absolutely sad, absolutely, I would say almost devastated from the look of things. And, I don't agree with either candidate on pretty much anything. However, I can still have empathy, with the way things shake out. So I'm going to really look forward to talking with her about her experience, her feelings, the nature of things on there. And I'm going to, I'm not always able to moderate the Facebook walls or whatever. I'm going to, especially if that turns out to be a Facebook Live, I'm going to, make sure that no one is putting out flippant comments, especially in such an important talk. So anyway, so then we have Rob Brown. His talk is called "The Personal Brand of You." Outstanding talk. Branding is everything, and brand. If you never heard this phrase, your personal brand, you're a little behind the eight ball. It's time to catch up, and you can catch up, but it's all about understanding whether you're an employee, whether you're a CEO, whether you are, a volunteer. We all have a personal reputation, otherwise known as a personal brand. It's going to be great. After that, Paul Sloane. I'm going to like this talk. This is just one of those really well done talks. And it is called Are You Open-Minded? And the answer, of course, the answer to that is a resounding no, we're not. We have our opinions. We have our presuppositions. And humans, we may take a little longer to balance our views, but once we have the views, then we have created a grid. We have created a worldview, and now we are effectively, especially if it does not serve us well, we are imprisoned by those views, by the worldview, by the lens that we see. If you had glasses on and somebody gave you glasses and they were rose-colored glasses, you would think the world was red. And it's not because of you. It's not because of the person you are. It's because of the lens through which you are seeing everything. And it's a really powerful thing. So I'm looking forward to talk and have a fun conversation with Paul about that. Sarah Hillware, after that, Teaching Our Girls the Truth. This is a great talk about empowering women, empowering our younger nieces and daughters and girls to just have dignity for them and to just really raise their self-image and their self-worth and their self-esteem and just build them up, especially as they are changing into young women. Sarah shares a story about herself in that age, and it's just going to make for a great conversation as well. Joanne Sweeney-Burke, I have a Facebook or a YouTube link for that. Oh, it happened again. Let's see. Yeah, and it's because I am asking. I have notes. Here we go. I have notes for these things that I took. Well, isn't that great? So Joanne Sweeney-Burke gave a TEDx talk in Ireland, and she is a serial entrepreneur. She is an accidental entrepreneur, and she's going to be talking about just basically picking yourself up when the chips are down. So there's a lot more to come with that, but I am looking forward to having her on the talk as well. Kathy Gruver is up after that. And actually, here's Joanne's tagline. I'm sorry for going back and forth. Her talk is really on, I'm finding my notes here, up speaking, standing up to talking down. So anytime somebody's being talked down to, she has developed her own thing to stand up to the talking down. And that, I mean, I think that languaging is going to be very, very, very helpful for many people. And I'm just really looking forward to hearing more about that as well. I am pulling up Dr. Kathy's talk right here. This is a little, I thought that I had gone through everybody on my talk. You know what? Here's what it is. Here's what it is, folks. I had reviewed all the people for Thursday, and Dr. Kathy is on Friday, so I will know more about that. Scott Ginsberg's talk is What's in a Name Tag. He talks about how he showed up at a networking event, and he very, very astutely chose to differentiate himself, and he differentiated himself by doing something totally opposite than everybody else was doing. So everybody else is ripping off their name tag. He left his on. It's going to be great to hear about his branding tips and differentiation tips as well. Kathy Gruver, I'm just pulling up her talk, apologies and transparency here. Her talk is called Trapeze, Travel, and Pink Slips. I'm going to be watching that talk. I can't wait to hear more about it. Now, wow, okay, I'm out of time, and I haven't even gone through what I learned from last week yet. Actually, I did. I learned I need to pace myself. I learned when you start interviewing close to 15 people back to back in weeks, or even closer to 20 people back to back in weeks, it's real easy for some things to fall through the cracks, as well as the energy level. Have no fear. We're going to press on, my friends. And I thought of something that I think would be appropriate to share at this time. I come from and it doesn't matter what kind of family that you come from. It doesn't matter if you had an education family and your parents were school teachers, or if you came from a plumbing family and your father or your mother was a pipe fitter and they just went out every day and worked. I come from a healthcare family. Okay, I think the important thing is, if you're blessed and privileged to come from a family where hard work and diligence was modeled for you, even if you were a little bit of lazy and whatever, as I certainly was for a long, long time. I think if you're privileged to have that kind of example, it really helps at times like this, because it's like, shoot, people come up and they say, oh, you interview a lot of people. Well, I don't know. I don't know, because if my father, who's a physician in a small town, if my father could see 25, 30 patients a day, and actually he saw a lot more than that, because he had, he would go do his rounds at the hospital. He would go to the local jail at the time, and then he would do, see the people in the jail. Then he would do office hours at his office if he wasn't at the pharmaceutical plant across the river, and he would do that in a morning. So he would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm not even, I'm in the middle of my REM cycle number 2 or number 3, and my dad's already seen all these patients. Then he's rounding at his office. Okay, those of you that know my dad, all you Danville people that actually like TED Talks and you watch Be the Talk, you know this about him, that he's rounding around for decades. He had all these different gigs, and this was after doing 100-hour plus a week residency. So I really don't have a whole lot to stand on when somebody comes to me and says, oh, you interview a lot of people. Well, hey, if my dad can see 30, 40 patients, I can interview, 20 people or 15 people in a day. Actually, I haven't even interviewed 15 people in a day. What I have done is maybe what you see is maybe 12 people on a Thursday and then maybe 5 or 6 people on a Friday. I haven't even gotten into the bigger, numbers yet. And yet, it is a little bit, fatiguing. It is a little bit much. So I'm not Superman. I don't have like an S on the shirt. I just have a little black shirt that I wear. It just seems to fit. All right. So let's talk about last week, because things continue to accelerate here on Be the Talk. Where is my list from last week? Where's my list from last week? I'm just going to go back to my calendar. I think I could look at my Google Calendar, click today. And then last week, which was June the 1st. And it's good to see Superintendent Hines with a couple of thumbs up, or what is that? Yeah, that's 2 thumbs up. I'm not wearing my glasses, so I had to go in for a little look there. Dr. Hines, Superintendent Hines, gave a great talk and a great interview about his PEAS acronym, which reminds me, because I'm a smart aleck, it reminds me of that bumper sticker, which is a spoof of the original bumper sticker, which is very TED-friendly idea that we should all aspire to. Visualize world peace. But Dr. Hines' acronym is PEAS, and that makes me think of the bumper sticker, visualize world with a W, peas, the vegetable, which is not, that's me being silly, but we had a great talk, because if I interviewed you and you put a comment, I'm just going to prioritize you in the order is what I shall do. So we had a great talk about strengths, and who was it? I used to teach this for my graduate students. Who was the psychologist, the strength-based Gardner? Howard Gardner had the theory of multiple intelligences, and I love it because he was a guy that busted us out of this idea that you've got the math and then you've got the verbal. SATs, it's like those are the 2 categories of learning, and those are the only 2 that matter, and those are the highest 2 that matter. And I love, hearing a superintendent whose TEDx talk was all about how he was nearly a high school dropout. I mean, he was a very poor student. He was very much checked out, and he is also a very brilliant man. I mean, his Facebook Live, and he kind of prepped me a little bit, and I believed him. I believed him, because if you're a school superintendent, I would imagine that you have a following, and I would imagine that there would be people and parents following. I did not think that there would be a person who shares the Facebook Live about 92 times within an hour of the Facebook Live going live to various educational groups. So I'm thinking, what is this? And I don't know that it was really a fan. I don't know. I don't know. I was just trying to figure out what the world is going on here. Is this some kind of a fluke? No, I think a real human did this. So that's cool. And the cool thing is, almost all the comments, very, very happy parents in the district and all that. So Dr. Hines runs a school district. He superintends a school district in central Long Island, New York. Obviously a great place to live. Obviously have some advantaged, people, in that region who are able to maybe commute into New York City. And I'm sure a lot of challenges that we would never know about. With that kind of demographic and everything else. And one of the good things, and it was great to see a real professional like Dr. Hines really credit the support, because as a leader you can't do anything without support, and also as a leader you have to gather support, you have to earn that support. But when you have the support, it's a smart thing to keep staying in a state of perpetual gratitude for the support. And it's because of that he was able to lead some really controversial initiatives like doubling recess and letting kids be kids and letting kids out longer on the playground so that they can learn how to interdependently develop leadership skills and develop independence so that someday they won't, live back at home or whatever. They could have independent lives. It makes a lot of sense, and apparently it's very controversial. I'm sure there's, different ways to look at this. I'm sure there are different details, and, I'm sure that with so many thousands of children, there are always going to be different stories. So, I don't want to straw man this too much, but it was really cool to see that. And I'm going to tell you Dr. Hines' acronym because I've started dropping hints about it 5 minutes ago. It's PEAS. So physical, it was physical education. It was emotional education. It was academic education, and also social education. All of those areas. And the academic, I think we cover the academic, as well as we can in school without addressing any of the other ones, except maybe a little bit of physical education. But it's like if you don't have the emotional strengthening of a child, I don't have any kids, so don't listen to me. I'm not an authority on kids or anything, but it would seem to me like if you're not emotionally supported in school or socially given some tools to make your way out in the world, I would think that academic would be fairly strangled. I would think, if I go out there and I only feed one kind of fertilizer and I don't water the plant and I only put fertilizer on it, it's not going to grow all that much. So anyway, go figure. I'm a little above my pay grade with some of these comments, but it was really neat. And all that to say, I thought that a couple of the Facebook Lives last week, 2 weeks ago, were exceptional. The one with Nalini Krishnankuti on immigration that surpassed 1,000 views, and Willem Phillipson on being choosing to live again, and how he, after half of his body debilitated with a stroke, he learned how to swim again and swam a 5K. And had this transformational experience. Friends and family jumped on board and shared and spread his message. 1.4 thousand, 1,400, and that was a big record for us here at Be the Talk within a few days. Michael Hines shares his, and other people share and share and share and share. Has over 3,400 views, and so why not? We have 8 billion people on the planet. We have Facebook Live. It's free to share. Why not share? Why not have the views? It's just really nice. It's just really cool. I thought a few times this weekend, for what it's worth. Dr. Hines, very busy man, superintendent of a very well-educated school district. I'm sure not very easy to do. So, if you found this through part of his tribe or following or his district, and maybe you're watching this right now, I think you'd agree with me that when you've got very, educated, financially better off people in a certain region, you're going to really have to have your game together as a leader, as a teacher, as anybody. You could be a custodian in that school district. It's got to be done to a certain level. All the way. And then there's the giving back in the world and being able to be blessed, to be a blessing. I have thought many, many times about, he did not have time. I'm sure that Dr. Michael Hines did not have time to take 40-minute time slot. Actually, it was a little after that because we did a Skype sandwich with Sangbrita, the next guest. He was kind enough to just welcome her in, and I introduced the newest alumni to the next guest, and then I step out of the way and I let them give advice and all of that, and it's a fun thing. He did not have time to do that interview. Now, he acted like he had all the time in the world. He was one of the best guests that I've ever had in over 200 guests. One of the very best guys. I'm watching that and taking notes on just how he comported himself during the interview, and I'm just like, I learned so much as an interviewer, interviewing many people like him who are, more experienced leaders and doing this. So even though he carved out time to do this interview, and we created this, and then I fulfill, the part of the bargain that I have to fulfill, which is to, go on the Facebook Live if if you want to do that and record the interview. The interview is going to come out on the podcast in another I mean, and my math was off because when you interview 20 people in a week, by the end of the week, if you're telling everybody it's going to be out in 6 weeks, you need to start adding in, for the 21 people, one person a day. It adds another week, every day you're interviewing at least. So I was a little bit off with that. We created this thing, we uploaded this thing, and within an hour or two, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people impacted by this interview. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, hey, Karen McGregor. I mean, 500 people already have seen our Facebook Live, which is just really off the chart. And it was just so much fun. So, I mean, we're really, I'm hanging on to the ride. Okay. So those of you that weren't here for the beginning of this, little news flash, I am likening Be the Talk podcast with its new virtual Facebook part as across the river there's from me in southern New Jersey, which is actually very surprisingly very, very rural. It really is rural. It is rural. And there is a rodeo. It's a little slice of Texas in South Jersey. And I'm likening Be the Talk podcast to that rodeo. So I'm interviewing, 15 to 20 people a week. And now I'm compressing what I learned last week, as well as I've already introduced the guests later this week. And I'm tired just doing this Facebook Live, sharing my learning with you. And you know what? And then I think of my father, who see 20, 30, 40 patients in a day who are all, sick and kind of whiny a little bit. And, some of them are just doing physicals and they're okay. But I mean, it's got to not be very fun, to be in healthcare. And my father tells me this, you have to be called to go into healthcare. Guess where I didn't go? Guess where? Well, I never felt the call. I never felt the call to healthcare, and I stay away and I interview healthcare here on Be the Talk, and I have a fun time doing it. So that's why we have why I share what I learned with all of you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Hines, for jumping on. Karen McGregor, Canada's sales from the stage leader. Now, when my friend Paula Hopwood, I'm like, hey, Paula commented something, and Paula, I guess somehow I must have hijacked Paula's Facebook feed, because I see this comment from Paula, who I met at a leadership event several years ago, and I think it was, several events. And she says, Nathan, you just interviewed my sales mentor, and I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, cool. So, I mean, kind of the different little tribes are kind of bleeding over on one another. And Karen, man, it was a pleasure and honor to be able to interview you. And we talked about just your journey. And really, it was so cool. You got to watch Karen's Facebook Live, because she just talks about where many, if not almost all of you watching are right now, and where you're in a job you probably don't like very much. You like listening to your TED Talks. You like listening to your, TEDx Talks or your Q or your Idea City or your Google Talks. You like this, and you dream maybe of one day being able to be kind of a solopreneur and have your, slate of clients and fly around and speak and all of that. And that's where I was, and that's where Karen was. Karen was there, and we talked about how the first seminar, she went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and even 20 years ago, 3,000 women are jumping up and down at the Tony Robbins seminar. And it's not about a Tony Robbins seminar. It's not about a Nathan Eckel seminar or a Karen McGregor seminar. It's about you finding somebody who can help you, somebody who you can relate to, someone who can relate to you. And obviously, from the size of Karen's following, so many thousands and thousands and thousands of people relating to Karen's journey, and Karen was in that spot. I've been in that spot where you find a mentor and you start learning how to, it's like you start learning how to invest in them, and this is your money. Okay, this is your hard-earned money, and you start learning how to pry your fingers off, your mind off of, oh, well, this is a book and it costs $12. Am I going to get $12 worth of value out of this? I don't even know if Karen McGregor has a $12 book, but if she did, it's like, well, am I going to get $12 value? Or one of my books, it's like a Nathan Eccles book. Is this going to be $12? I'm going to get a refund if it's not. And we start with that kind of an attitude, and then we start getting to know these people, and then we realize I have to model what I want to be someday. And do I want to be a stingy learner, or do I want to be mindful? Do I want to be wise and judicious? But also, when I've invested, I made a quality decision and I'm all in, and I'm not going to have strings attached, and I'm not going to be, I'm just going to model a model of generosity so that they can pour into me, and I don't have any of my negative thinking or, attitude or old stuff holding them back from being able to pull me up. It was a great talk. I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for another very, very busy person popping in. And Karen, I'm glad we were able to finally connect on Skype, because it was a little shaky there for a minute because we were just missing, and Skype is so hard to actually connect, even though I try to have them reach out to me, and I try to reach out to my guests, and Skype is just a horrible interface. Why do I use it? Because the audio quality is second to none, and because I have to, with back to back 15, 16, in the coming weeks, people, not just a week, but I'm moving, as my schedule is filling very rapidly. I have less and less available days to be interviewing. So I'm going to be putting even more interviews in a day. So with all of that, Skype it is, or a backup phone call if that doesn't work. And we were going to the backup phone call, but then Skype was able to pull through. I think it was Karen's son, the tech genius. I get this inbound Skype call, and it says Karen on it, and we were able to do it. Why do I go into this? Well, part of it's a bunny trail, but it's a purposeful bunny trail. All of you who are on deck to be interviewed, reach out to me on Skype. If you don't hear back from me, it's because you reached out to the wrong Nathan Eckel, or one of my other profiles I haven't been able to delete, and I'm not getting it. The real me, the present me, isn't getting it. So please reach out to me, because I want everybody that really wants it get a great interview. All right, now, okay, we started with Tony Loyd. Tony is another podcaster, and we talked about all kinds of fun stuff. What I got from Tony, aside from the content, which you can check out, I think we did a Facebook Live, or I do have video, at least with him. We really talked more about his multiple TEDx talks. Most recently, TEDx Duke just went live a few days ago. Looks wonderful. And we talked about just being in the moment, being a good speaker, being mindful, a mindful speaker, an exemplar speaker. So what that means is you show up, you get your talk accepted, you prepare. How do you comport yourself relative to all the other speakers? There might be, if it's a small event, there might be another, 7 people there, or there might be 30 other people or 40 other people at some of these events there. So how do you comport yourself towards the organizer, the MC, the staff, the volunteer staff, the production team, the other speakers? How do you comport yourself if you're first, if you're last? And Tony and I, we talked about, you're really at the mercy of the production and how experienced they are, how stable a team they are, how little turnover they have. There might be all of those things in place, but if the theater location, if the top theater in town gets suddenly sold and the new place goes in, which happened locally at an organization here, where our top venue is absolutely perfect, so much space, and it looks so great on camera, and then it sold the venue. Another company came in and like 3 times, doubled or tripled the rental price, and we had to go to other theaters. I mean, what do you do? So, here's what not to do. I'll tell you, what not to do is get your little panties in a bunch and get all yappy. What you do is you look at it, you say, okay, well, this was great, or maybe this isn't so great, and if it's not so great, you can always apply to your next talk and get another shot in there. There's no limit. I mean, there are many people now that I'm in the early days. I talked to maybe, a very small handful of people who did multiples, but now I'm talking regularly to people that have done 3 or 4 branded talks. So I really appreciated Tony and the way that he had that interview with me, and we were able to spend some time really educating you about how to presence yourself when you have a killer opportunity. Brian Snee after that. This was a fun interview. Oh my gosh. It was fun talking to Brian because we were talking about Lincoln Before Lincoln. He had a book called Lincoln Before Lincoln, and his talk was all about how in older times, maybe lower technological times, eloquence was a virtue, but today it's a vice. And Brian's point is, talking inarticulately and talking simply is not necessarily a virtue. We can be snookered, okay, and hint, hint, nudge, nudge. No overt references, but I mean, we can be snookered by simple talk as well as complicated talk. And there's a spectrum. I mean, even TED Talks. I mean, I think the organization had to really self-police itself a few years ago because there was somebody that gave a talk, and I think it was a TEDx talk, but it was just basically psychobabble. It was literally the guy goes up on a stage. I don't know if this was performance art, but he gets up on the stage and he just uses all of this technobabble. And when somebody who was sort of close to his field actually listened and went back and said, I never heard of this, I never heard that word, what's this word mean? And actually went back and realized the talk was basically made up. And then it was like the emperor has no clothes. So you can be fancy, you can be simple, and deception is no discerner of style, I think is his point. After that, Ira Wolf. We had a great, fun talk about creativity. Ira Wolf is a millennial in a baby boomer's body. Ira Wolf is a former dentist. He completely hung up his practice and followed his passion. And we had a really fun talk about that, about some of the issues that come up when you re-engineer and reinvent yourself and become open to change to that degree. Now, my next guest was Johnny Campbell. Okay, now this is a fun one because I just put a little bit of a reference to a little TED controversy. Well, okay, Johnny Campbell. Everybody I have on Be the Talk is a branded speaker. Okay, so TED, it's the big one. TEDx, even bigger one. Okay, 100,000 TEDx local TEDx alumni, including myself. Google Talks, Q Ideas, which is more of a faith-based, kind of traditional faith-based, but they talk about, any issue, hot button issue in society. And then what's the other one? Idea City that I define. Those are the big 5. Johnny Campbell mostly he is a professional public speaker. He's the head of National Speakers Association for the state of Illinois. I believe previously, he might be currently, I believe previously, but I mean, National Speakers Association, if you want to be a professional speaker, that is the organization you have to belong to, almost have to belong to. So that's very big. And then he is a Toastmaster, and I've got AAT, and the accredited speaker. So there are a whopping 75 people on the planet right now who are accredited speakers by Toastmasters International. 75 for 8 billion people, okay? So the best of the best. And he gave a great TEDx talk about thanking your enemies. It was very similar to the Stoicism. It was very similar to what we've heard in recent weeks, and embracing your enemies, embracing competition. Constructive competition as well as not so constructive, and utilizing it for constructive ends. What was so fun about this interview is I decided to, because he's a TEDx alumni, just like the rest of us on the talk, but he is mostly from the world of Toastmasters and the world of the National Speakers Association, which isn't really a style of speaking. He corrected me and sharpened my language a little bit. It's more of an association, obviously. But I think my point is that they have curricula in National Speakers Association. You can take courses and they will guide you in a certain style of roadmap of speaking, whatever. So I wanted to hear his critique of TED Talks and branded talks and whatnot. So he gave some really good critiques, and one of those critiques was that we're too unfocused. As TEDx alumni, as branded alumni, we will go up there and we'll just give an idea, but it doesn't necessarily map back to our life's work. And so that may sound very noble, but why are you practicing for 40, 50, 60 hours, if not months and months and months, which I'm talking to more and more people that have carved out 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months to deliver their talk. Why would you do that if it doesn't relate to your own, again, here it is again, personal brand? Why would you not do that? Which is just such a smart thing. It's a good business sense also. So Johnny, I let him, and afterward, I think we talked about it, and I said, I really wanted to give you that opportunity. I think it was a little therapeutic for him. He might have even said something to that effect, and it made for a really, really real, raw interview, and he's one of us. He's one of us, and he's also from these other very highly accomplished in these other speaking traditions as well. Catherine Lennon Johnson. What a great talk here. We talked about empathetic design. We talked about the design of living spaces and social spaces. It was all based off of her talk upon that effect. And it was just really fun because she's coming from a social awareness, almost like a social worker awareness, but she's also a designer, planner, systems person, architecturally minded person. So it was a very unique bifurcation of things that we really need. Basically, the idea is our cities and our roads and our grid were laid out in a well-meaning fashion, I hope. I would certainly hope by the people, the powers that be, basically all men. And what do we need now? We need a woman's touch. We need empathy. We need kind of those, and I'm being stereotypical here, so please don't nail me too hard, but I mean a little bit of the softer side. Now women, very, very strong, all of that, but there's a uniqueness to the female perspective that our cities can certainly use. And that was really kind of the point of her talk, and we had a really fun talk about that. After that, Jeff Butler, multiple TEDx speaker. And part of the reason that I was a little confused when I was ramping up for this talk is I had originally watched his one talk, and then kind of at the last minute to refresh myself, I found the other talk, and my mind wasn't making the connection because I watched two different talks of his. So it was really funny. So he does millennial consulting. He goes in, flies into Google or these different companies and helps them with their millennials, basically, which basically means, stop judging millennials, treat them like anybody else, give them a shot. It reminds me 20 years ago as a Generation Xer being called a slacker and all that stuff. So he gave some really great tips of he's a guy that's tried a lot of things. He's not afraid to be bold, very seasoned speaker. And he talks about some of the things that he did that kind of, blew back on him, and sometimes he went for an impact. He got an impact, but it was such an impact that it was a little too much of an impact sometimes. So he was really candid with us and told us all kinds of neat stuff about what happens when it goes a little too far. Melissa Agnes, this was a fascinating conversation, and it is a Facebook Live, so you can scroll back and watch this. She gave a talk to the City of Los Angeles, TEDx City of Los Angeles. It was by the Emergency Management Department, actually organized a TEDx out there. And so she was talking about brand management and crisis management and what happens when you are, for example, a police department, but you are really on your game. So you tweet things out, you tweet where you're going to be with the speed gun to catch people so that you don't have to catch people. And then people are like, why are you telling us where you are, Chief? They're like, well, because frankly, we'd rather not pull you over. We'd rather you go the speed limit. And what did that do? Trust. That's the way, I mean, amazing. A police department. I mean, no matter how, supportive you are in the men in blue and the women in blue, these days, if you are going to be aware, you would know that there are some really big controversies and horrible things that have happened. Sorry, you guys, that was my dog snoring. If you can hear that, that is Cole snoring, and I heard it through my ear, my headphones here. Melissa gave us that great example of how a police department can add value and add trust so that when something happens, there's enough trust that the whole leadership doesn't have to get, disbanded and, and prosecuted or any of that sort of thing. And then she talked about what happens when you don't build trust and there's a data breach or something like that. Nobody believes you. Okay? You get hauled up before Congress or whatever. I mean, it was just, and she's so darned articulate. I am really looking forward to possibly talking more with her in a future time with some bonus content, because there was one of those interviews where if I had to rip us away from the interview just to get to the Blitz round, to talk about you, to talk about your talk about what she learned that can help you as opposed to her subject matter expertise. After that, Michael Hines came on. We talked about Michael Hines, Superintendent Hines, it seems like about 2 hours ago here on this Facebook Live. Then we had Sangrita Moitra, and she talked about she talked about personal branding, and she talked about it in terms of how do you want to be unique? What unique feeling do you want to give to people when they work with you? And I hear that, and it's like, very similar to Anna Dolce from I think a week or two ago. Very, very similar in that way. And she talked about, Sangrita talked about works of art, and she talked about the feeling that it evokes. And it's like, what are you going to evoke at the end of your consulting contract or your keynote or whatever it is? What is that feeling you want to leave people with? Just a great talk. Ergin Ozdemir from Sweden stayed up until midnight to talk to us. I don't know why the Europeans always get like the super duper late night slots. Same thing happened with Willem. Same thing happened with Sangrita, actually. She was calling from Europe. I don't know why, but it was just a lot of fun in that way. And Ergin, I looked, and Ergin's website is ergin.se, I think, for Sweden. So this is a man that got the 5-digit domain name back when they came out. This is just absolutely huge. Ergin is a hard-driving chief information officer type person who has a son with a superpower. And the superpower is the son has the power over Ergin with a wave of his hand to dismiss Ergin and basically banish him away, this strong binary man who thinks in black and white for much of his life and can banish Ergin away from his presence if Ergin approaches him in the wrong mental state. If Ergin is not present, if Ergin is not there to learn from his son can tell. And Ergin's son is autistic and has this superpower of being able to be very, very sensitive to Ergin's mood in a way that Ergin has learned to be sensitive to himself. And, powerful. So I talked to a guy like Ergin, and I'm thinking, man, this is like looking in a mirror here, because like, how present am I at home with my dog, or how present am I at home with my wife? Sometimes I really miss the mark too. So that was a fascinating conversation. Final conversation of the day was the most challenging conversation. Dr. Jen of Dr. Jen's Den, and Dr. Jennifer Gonzalez. When someone has a handle like Dr. Jen's Den, yeah, she's a sex therapist. Her talk was called Overcoming Female Sexual Shame. And I'm thinking, we need to, I think the time has come to talk about a overtly sexual related, or it was really more gender related, but it turns out, Dr. Jen is a sex therapist, and a sociologist, and she looks from that angle. The reason that I brought her on the show, and I told her as much, is I watched her talk, and when you've got statistics basically saying that I think it's, like 50% of women have been, assaulted in some way or harassed, it's probably 100% of women have been harassed, in that. I mean, it's like, this is just endemic. You got the Me Too. You've got all of this stuff crashing around us. And, at one point during the interview, cause I'm not, I'm not, none of us are perfect. None of us have ever, been able to navigate the world of, dating and relationships and all of that. And I think that's one of the reasons that men like myself, I mean, it's like, this is hard to talk about because, even if you do kind of come from, I kind of have this traditional family raised thing where they really hammered this on me, treat women with respect and don't, and we called it sin, which you're not, we don't really like to talk about sin in our culture, but that was a sin because, and I think it's legit because, I mean, you look at this Me Too stuff, I think we could just call it a sin like we used to, but I mean, that relates itself to judgment and subjective judgment and, and power plays and all of that. So I get it. But I was raised in that way, and it's still hard to ask the question because you're not, none of us are sinless, if I can put it that way. Especially when it comes to relating to people that we are attracted to. So even if we try. So I'm asking the question, what can men do without getting caught up in Twitter, without getting reactionary? I mean, I've got a 7-day-a-week podcast to do. So, every time that somebody on, my thousands of Facebook friends and someone is having an issue and wants me to take a stand and, step out of the silence and all of this stuff, I would be doing that all day instead of doing this. Yet I still want to value the people in my life. I want to value my wife. I want to value my sisters. I want to value my sisters-in-law, my nieces. I want to be part of a better world for them. So, getting a little vulnerable, you might want to watch that Facebook Live as well. Hallelujah. We are done with Thursday's review, and quickly I'm going to review Friday's review of last week. Very, very quickly. Don Ream. Now, I mentioned him already. That was a blast, a broadcaster. Talked about the power, the multiplier effect when you have synergy on the workplace. A lot of other great stuff. Karen McGregor, we just talked about her when she had posted here in the comments. So just go back to that. Pragya Agarwal, another creativity expert. We talked about the role of creativity. We talked about some of her unique skill sets and just how it all comes together as a scientist as well as a high creative, and how she's developing new models for other people. And then there was Katie Nall, who broke the mold with me, because Katie is a mathematician and she found a way to reduce test anxiety through tapping technique. And now Katie is, I don't think she'll be offended with me if I use the word. I mean, I as one quirky person to another, she's at least as quirky as I am. Okay, and she got me going. She got me laughing because we're in the Blitz round. Okay, you all know what the Blitz round is. Listen to the Be the Talk podcast. When we're talking about the Blitz round, if I have the time, I'm going to ask you what unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing happened during or right after your talk. And the thing that happened after her talk, and this is not something to laugh at, but it was just the way that she explained it. It was like and in the beginning of the Blitz round, I asked, are you nervous or were you in the zone? She's like, oh, I was in the zone. And I said, why? She said, well, because I was tapping. And I said, well, great, it worked. But here's the thing. You're going to have to watch I think it was the Facebook Live. We have it on Facebook Live. I mean, it was like Montezuma's Revenge of the Nerves. It wasn't Revenge of the Nerds. It was Revenge of the Nerves. And I think I found the title, Revenge of the Nerves. With Dr. Katie Nall. That's what her podcast episode is going to be called, because she's walking off stage and she's thinking, oh, it's all over, but she's not off stage. And the nerves apparently she tapped them away, but they came back and they somehow knocked her over. Now, I would never laugh at, anyone falling off. I mean, there's a meme of a supermodel on a runway that you just see out of nowhere, and she's wobbling, and it's not fair or good to laugh, especially men laughing at women or whatever. But I mean, the way that she told it and the way that she had sidestepped the nerves because of her technique and just the way that it was explained, I kind of lost a little bit. And it was kind of more like, if you remember the old car talk from NPR, where somebody would be like, my car's dead and I'm poor and I can't fix it, but here's what happened. And then everybody would just start laughing. It was just like therapy. It kind of turned into car talk instead of be the talk. I can't thank Katie Null enough for just being an awesome interviewee. All right, you guys. One video this week for everybody to watch. One video to rule them all. And I will see you later this week. I'll see you on Thursday. We got some interviews to do. Any comments, just type them in the comments, and I would be happy to acknowledge and talk with you there. Let's look at people that wrote little comments here. We got Brian. Thank you, Brian Benson. Thank you, Josh Powlison. Can't wait for you guys' talks and interviews. Rich, my freshman neighbor. Good to see you, neighbor. It's like Mr. Rogers all over again. Andrea, it's good to see you. Andrea, Josh, good to see you again. Rich, good to see you again. Josh, good to see you again. Rich, good to see you again. Dr. Hines, Superintendent Hines, so good that to see you here on the feed. What an amazing view base that you have, sir. Paul Gustafson, Mr. Chief Technology Officer. Best place to work in Virginia for at least 5, I think maybe 6 years running, and I think that the vote comes out pretty soon, sir, if I'm not mistaken. Karen McGregor, Canada, not America's, Canada's sales from the stage expert. You rock the virtual sage. Nathan Eckel, be the talk. Thank you. Joanne Sweeney-Burke, I can't wait for your interview, my friend. So delighted to be on the pod. I am delighted to have the honor and the privilege to be talking with you, Joanne, this week. So everybody, thanks so much. Take care. Send me a little prayer for my energy level. I'm going to go offline. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody. Rock it.